guys, Lori here. I'm here today to do the mid-year freakout tag. I've seen this from like a bunch of people. I've seen it from Alexa Love Books. I've seen it from Super Space Chick. I've seen it from the people from Owl Crate. So I decided to go on the bandwagon and do it myself. I did it last year, and it's actually nice to take like stock of my reading life and just see what my goals are. So I'm gonna start. This isn't a part of the tag, but I want to just say this for my own self when I go back and watch this. That currently I have read 70 books or experienced 70 books, which is right on track for me because my ultimate goal is to read 150 books a year. Last year, I think I read 158 books, but my goal is like 150. So if I can get up to 100 books by the time I go back to school, which is in like September, I would be so proud of myself. I want to definitely work on, definitely with the new year coming, like the new school year, I want to get into a better system where I'm reading and listening an equal amount, because the second half of the year I didn't listen to anything, and that's why I fell so far behind on audiobooks and podcasts, just because it wasn't something that I wound up doing a lot of. So I'm going to try to come up with a better system. I think I might even do a video on it just because I have a really, really long commute. So I'm just trying to make my time a little bit more effective. And I'm hopeful now that like with my planning that I'm going to be able to do, I won't be as caught up doing that when I go home, so I can probably read a little bit more. But the first question is, what are your top books of the year? This is super hard for me to choose, so I'm just going to choose my top three. And one I think is kind of cheating a little bit because one of these books doesn't come out until 2020, so I'm going to give you guys like two books for the fantasy category. And the first book I'm going to chat about is Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson, or Margaret Rogerson. I got it from Owl Crate, and I actually loved it. I really flew through it. I thought it was such a great historical fiction inspired novel about libraries. I really loved the main character. I thought the world building was so capturing, and I was just so captivated by it. Like, I thought the ending had a few pace issues, but other than that, it was one of my favorite reads of the year by far. And I really, really enjoyed it. I haven't heard the best thing about Enchantment of Ravens, but this book definitely like makes me even curious to go back and read that book. But it was definitely much longer. I thought the world building was spectacular. I thought the character growth was amazing, and I was so captivated by this character and these worlds, and the romance was really engaging as well. And it had elements of, I just love the world building. I think the world building was definitely a highlight. So that was one book that I really enjoyed this year. The next fantasy book that I really loved was Wicked As You Wish by Rin Chopra. This book doesn't come out until 2020 in March, but oh my god, this book like blew my mind. I loved it so much. It's basically like an alternative history fairy tale series, and it basically follows this girl named Talia, and she lives in this city where she's like there's fairy tales. And her kingdom that she's supposed to grow up in was turned into ice by the Ice Queen, and then they were sent to America, to Texas or Arizona, and they're basically like immigrants in this society. And they're not always as welcomed as they want to be. And you follow this girl named Talia and the Prince Alexei as they go around this adventure. But it was just so well done. This world building was amazing. I love the ragtag group of characters. I was so captivated by this. It really read to me almost like a Descendants novel. It just was so well done. I really loved like the adventuring that happened. I loved the friendship. I loved the relationships. I loved the magic. I was just so captivated by this book. So it definitely was one of my favorite reads of the year. Like, I really, really love this book. I'm just so sad that I have to wait until like 2021 for the next book. But it's definitely a book that should be on your radar for 2020. And I am actually doing a giveaway on my blog of an arc of this, so be sure to go follow me there. And that video is going to go, well, I think it's going to go live this week or last week, so I don't know when this video goes up, but that one goes up. I think the giveaway will be up before it, so be sure to go check out that if it's still open. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed this book. And then the next book is a contemporary that I just wound up finishing, and that's 10 Blind Dates by Ashley Elston. I got this from BEA. It doesn't come out until October, but this is like the perfect Christmas-themed contemporary read, and I normally try to read one a year, so I'm going to have to find one to read around the holidays. But this book follows a girl named Sophie, and she's so excited. It's Christmas, and all she wants to do is spend it with her boyfriend. Her boyfriend has other plans when he breaks up with her, And she winds up going to spend the break week with her family, who's really, really big. She's a super big family, which I love because I come from a big extended family. And her grandma comes up with this plan to send her out on 10 blind dates that her family members set her up with. It was so fun. I mean, I would definitely read this book closer to the holidays, but oh my god, I read it now and I just loved it. I thought it was so funny, so charming. The dates were so fun. The family dynamics were awesome. I'm going to talk about this in my reading wrap up for July, but oh my god, this book was so, so, so good, and you really need to check it out when it comes out in October. The next question that I got, or at this quiz gave me, was what's the best sequel that you read this year? Now, this is hard. I haven't read a whole lot of sequels. I think it's because most of my sequels I haven't just got around to yet. But the one sequel or non-companion book that I picked up is actually the third book in a series, and that's The Burning Maze by Rick Riordan. Normally, I would have a copy of the Rick Riordan books to show you, but one of my students has accidentally kidnapped it, so I may have to go out and buy myself a new one, but that's okay. But I actually love this book. I definitely thought it definitely did change the game for this series. I was really incredibly shocked, and that's what everyone said kind of going in, like kind of prepare yourself emotionally, and I definitely would do that. Um, but I really enjoyed it. I love Apollo. I think he's so funny. And I think this book was really captivating. I'm definitely going to have to re-listen to this, probably closer to it. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that because I'm going to read the book twice. But I'm definitely am excited for book 4. But I really love this book. This book definitely like tugged at your emotions a little bit. And it was definitely like, I thought it was a good turn for the series, but like an unexpected turn. So just kind of go in knowing that. But I actually really enjoyed this book. And this is definitely one of my favorite books I've read this year. Definitely my favorite sequel. The next question, what are some books that are currently out or like that came out recently that you still need to read? And for me, it is the Modern Fairy Tales bind up of Holly Black, which is all of her Tide, Valiant, and Ironside. And I actually do have the older books, but I did want to get the right bind up because I know that she edited it a little bit. But yeah, I actually own these, like I've owned these like 4 different times. I just never got around to reading them, and I would like to reread them or read them for the first time and then reread Wicked King and Cruel Prince. But this is one that's definitely on my list, and I might actually try to read book 1 next after I finish reading the book I'm currently reading. And then hopefully I really want to make some better progress and catch up on some of my Owl Crate books. I definitely am going to read the one that's coming this month relatively quicker, but I definitely do want to read We Hunt the Flame by Aziz Fazayad. And I know that this is a historical fiction novel set in, I think it's set in like Arabia. But I know it has to do, like, she's hunting for, like, an artifact. And I heard that it's really, really good. So hopefully I enjoy it. So these are 2 current or modern or recent releases that I do definitely need to read relatively fast. And I do want to make some more progress on my older backlist titles from Owl Crate. That includes The Gilded Wolves and a couple other ones that I still have on my shelf. So the next question is, what are 2 books in the second half of the year that you are really excited about? And the way that I did this is because I've been lucky enough to attend BEA and BookCon, so I actually do have a lot of the releases that I'm super excited about. But I made this list with books that I don't currently have in my possession. So one of them is The Tyrant Tomb by Rick Riordan. 4 in the Apollo series. I talked about The Burning Maze. I loved it so much, but I desperately need this book. And I actually was so upset because this book got pushed back a lot. Normally, his books come out in like May, and this was pushed back to October. So it's going to deal with the aftermath of that book, but we're also going to go to the Roman camp, and we're going to see Hazel and Frank and a bunch of other characters that we haven't seen for a while. Which is one thing I really do like about this series. You get to see all the characters, but just in like little slits, like little elements, which I really enjoyed. So that's a book that I'm really excited for, and that comes out in October. The next book that I'm really excited for is actually quite ironic. It's called The Guinevere Deception by Kiersten White, and it's actually a Camelot themed book. And I actually just finished reading one that's inspired by Arthurian legend, and this is another one that is Arthurian legend. Well, this cover is gorgeous. I don't know how I'm going to get this, but this book is definitely going to stay in my collection because this book is so pretty. But it basically follows this girl named Guinevere, and she's actually a changeling, and she has to go save Camelot and save Arthur. So Merlin sends her there, and that's kind of the start of it. And she has to like navigate political life and like all that other stuff. It sounds a little bit like her premise to The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein, which I still have not read, but it is still on my bookshelf. So, but I'm really excited to dive into more Arthurian books this year. I'm going to finish reading the Camelot Code series, but this one seems right up my alley, and it may motivate me to finally rewatch Merlin, which I'm super excited hopefully to do this year as well. The next prompt was your most disappointing read of the year, and I actually have had a pretty good reading year, but I did have some books that slightly disappointed me. The one that I was really excited for, and I kind of went in a little bit hesitant because everyone I know that read it was a little bit like not thrilled with it, was Famous in a Small Town by Emma Mills. I really loved Foolish Hearts last year. It was like one of my favorite reads of the year last year when I read it. But this book, I thought it had a lot of cool pieces. Like I thought it had a lot of interesting elements, but they just never there was just no like connection. I thought that there was a lot of nice pieces, but they just didn't connect well enough to create a complete story. So I thought all the elements were there, but the execution was a little bit off, and that was just not what I was expecting from Emma Mills novel. It just didn't capture my attention. I felt like the plot and structure just was not as tightly wound as I was expecting. So this was probably one of my most disappointing reads of the year, and I'm hopeful that her next book will be a lot better. But I didn't hate it. It just didn't like, it wasn't what I was expecting. And I really love how she executes her novels. So I think that that was just something that like disappointed me. But it wasn't the worst book that I read this year. It just didn't meet my expectations. The next books are two books that wound up surprising me, and they're both contemporary books. And I actually wound up reading a lot of contemporary books from like March to like May because I was in the middle of doing my production of Willy Wonka, and it was literally the only thing I can focus on. I also had a girl in my cast who adored contemporary books, so I was reading them for her. So that's where two of these came out, but one of them was Always Never Yours by Emily Webberly and Austin Sigma Broca. About this pair later because they are just such a fun writing pair. This book was like a Romeo and Juliet inspired contemporary following this girl who she lives this life, but she always tends to fall for the guy right before he finds his one true love, and she's kind of over that. And she gets unexpectedly cast in a lead role in Romeo and Juliet, and it's kind of following her. I was looking at my book because I'm currently reading If I'm Being Honest by the same pair, but I really, really love this book. It was such a surprise. I flew through it. It was so fun, and I'm a theater geek, but I absolutely loved the theater, like the show as like a backdrop. It was just so fun, and I really, really loved it. I don't have a copy anymore because I gave it to one of the students in my cast. She was really excited to have it, but I might wind up picking up a hardback copy if I wind up keeping If I'm Being Honest. And then the next book that I was super excited about that was just a surprise was The Lying Woods by Ashley Elston. And that was the first book of hers that I've ever read. Kristen at Super Spaceship like literally would not stop talking about it, so I wound up picking up a copy of it, and I just thought that was so well crafted. It was a contemporary with a hint of like a mystery, but it was definitely more of a contemporary book, but the mystery like blew my mind. I was like, what is going on? So she's an author that I've definitely surprised me, and I want to keep reading her books. I still need to read one more that's currently out. But that book is another one that really surprised me by not the writing style, but also like the structure and the flow of the story is one that I really enjoyed. Is a fun one. It is who is your favorite fictional crush that you've met this year? I have a lot of fictional crushes that I've met over the course of my life. And I've actually read a lot more contemporary books normally than I do at this point. But the one character that kind of stuck with me was Hayden from The Felon Boyfriend by Casey West. To Date is probably one of my favorite Casey West books, along with the other ones, but I hadn't read those this year. But I really loved Hayden. I thought that he was such a fun character, and I just loved his relationship with Gia, and I flew through this read. He was such a good guy. My favorite scene in that book was Gia trying to guess his name, which was like such a funny scene, which if you've not read the book, she gets dumped on like at prom, and she winds up having Hayden go and like be her date to prom, but she doesn't actually know his name because she just keeps calling him Bradley, I think. So it was just such a fun read. I really really like these characters, and Hayden was a new boy to add to my list. But my favorite book boyfriend is the one that I'm currently reading right now, and if I would have finished this, I probably would have said it again. But Darian from Gigarella is a true joy, and I love him so much. What book made you cry this year? And I don't often cry when reading books. It takes like a lot to make me cry just in reading, but I don't know. I guess I would have to say Sal and Gabby Break the Universe. A book about alternative universes, and there was like elements of like, you know, someone was dead in their timeline but not dead in the other timeline, and that kind of like tugged at my heart a little bit. So I would say this book probably made me the closest to tears. But there were some other like other books this year that like the romances or the breakup of the romances really like annoyed me, especially, well, not annoyed me, but made me like a little emotional. And that was Only a Breath Apart between by Katie McGarry was another one. But this book was one that brought me very very near to tears. What book made you happy? And for me, I've talked about this book so much this year, but it's 10 Blind Dates by Ashley Elston. This book just put a really, really big smile on my face. I come from a super big family like this character, and just seeing her around her family at the holidays, seeing them get all up in each other's business was just so endearing to me and like so reminiscent of my own life. I really, really love this book. So this book definitely put a smile on my face in a lot of ways, but also tugged at my heart. So maybe tears and happiness, but I gave you another book for the one. But this one definitely put a smile on my face. So definitely go check this out in October. I'm gonna keep reminding you until you do it, or when October's here. So, but yeah, it was a very, very. I thought it was a very. It was a book that put a smile on my face, and some of the instances definitely made me laugh. So, or the dates that she was put into. Prettiest book you have acquired this year, and for me, it was definitely Soul of the Sword by Julie Kagawa. I haven't got around to reading this yet. I literally just got it, but this cover is so pretty. It's stunning. So this one definitely had to be the book that I chose for this one. This is definitely a very, very dense fantasy book. I would love to dive into it before I go back to school, but we will see if that actually happens. But this cover is definitely one that really motivated me to pick it up. And then the next question is, what is 3 books you want to read before the end of the year? I have a lot from BEA and BookCon, but here are just a few of the highlights. One is The Beautiful by Renee Ahdieh, which is a vampire retelling set in New Orleans, 1872. I have heard some people love this book and some people aren't the biggest fan, but as always, and I always tell you guys this as well, make sure you do read the book and come up with your own opinions and don't rely on other people's, not even my own. So I'm really excited to dive into this read. I'm really excited to dive into Serpent and Dove by Shelley Matherhorn, which comes out in September, and this is about magic is hunted, witches are burned, and bent on revenge, and this is another one that I'm really excited about. And also The Gray Shear by Kim Liggett, which is magic or madness, which I think is kind of like a modern or like a YA version of The Handmaid's Tale. So those are 3 books that I'm super excited to dive into this year. Let me know in the comments, what are some of your answers to this question? There was a lot of them, but I would love to hear your guys' thoughts. And yeah, let's see if by the end of the year if any of my opinions change, or if I actually wind up meeting my goal of 150 bucks. I'll talk to you guys later for another video.